The word that comes to mind with Bob, even when he was 20 years old, is sage. Sage.
Bob was a great arts advocate.
He was an incredible writer.
And he loved theater.
Bob cared about how people felt, and he wanted them to have fun when they were doing the work, and he wanted it to be done well. It was a really nice combination of all of those things into one person.
Fair to say that what Bob did at the Daily Orange, his legacy has really carried forward through all of the other Daily Orange staffs.
Bruce, for the uninitiated, what is the DO, or the Daily Orange?
It is the daily campus newspaper of Syracuse University, and when we went to Syracuse, we're talking about the early 70s, all of us used to love going to the newspaper office every day. It really made our campus life.
As I understand it, you and Bob worked together. You know a lot about his style. Talk to me about it.
He had this Yoda-like quality that, because of his demeanor and because of his obvious intellect and his warmth and humanity, that when Bob said something, you just assumed that was the way it was. Really, I mean, that's just the way he was. He had a fierce intellect, but it was really tamped down by his humility.
There is this story about the shoes that everybody says I should ask you about. Tell me the story of the shoes.
As part of his costume, you might say, he wore wingtips. He was very wise beyond his years, so it all made sense and it all fit together. And sometimes, for whatever reason, editors are known to be eccentric. He'd be in his office wearing a suit. You're talking about like a college junior, wearing a suit, and he had one wingtip on, and the other one was like on top of the file cabinet for whatever reason, right? And even after he left, the wingtip shoe stayed there. It became a ritual for new editors that you'd have to drink out of that shoe. Yeah.
Drink out of the shoe.
Yeah. Well, it was sort of, there was a liner. You weren't literally drinking out of the inner sole of the shoe.
The one thing I remember about Bob, one of many things I remember, is when I was an editorial assistant at New York Newsday, he was such a nice guy to me. I'm a kid, I've just graduated from college, and he made sure that I had stories to cover when it really wasn't my job to cover stories. He made sure that I was getting clips. He really cared about bringing people up. He wasn't about, I've achieved and, forget the rest of you. He was really about bringing other people up and making sure that other people were supported.
At the Journal News, you were an editor, he was an editor. Did you like him?
I did like him. I really did. Bob was just a very nice person. I love the way he talked about how much he loved entertainment, how much he loved the arts, and then to hear him talk about his wife and his daughter was just precious. He loved them. He definitely loved them and loved talking about them, and not in a braggy sort of way, but he was just proud of them, and it was so nice to see. It really was.
As you know, we're going to raise money for a scholarship in his name. If he were here, would he say, no, don't do that, give it to somebody else?
While outwardly he may say, you don't have to do that for me, I know he would be really happy about that, because that's what he was about. Bringing other people up, making sure other people were supported.
As an editor, if you can say, the more you can say yes, the more you can trust your people, the better results you're going to get, I think. Bob said yes almost all the time. I came to Bob and I said, Bob, we're a local newspaper. I said, I really want to cover high school musicals the way we cover high school sports. I said, there are 63 high schools. I want to cover all these musicals. He said yes.
Editors have to be able to discipline. How did Bob discipline?
We're selfish. We want all of our copy to get in, and when it's 20 inches, I need it to be 20 inches, and he would show me that it really could be 15. Little thing, but it's kind of inside baseball. But I think he was so positive that you kind of wanted to give him everything you could, and he didn't often have to scold us because we wanted to please him.
What do you miss most about him?
He was so positive, and he was so giving, and so generous with his time, with his laughter, with his praise for your work.
What was lucky for us was that Steve Abcon, who is the executive director and founder of the Jacob Burns Film Center, his wife was performing in my play Lost in Paradise. And because Bob had a relationship with Steve, I mean, who doesn't have a relationship with Steve in this county, who is an esteemed person like Bob? So Steve was the one that urged Bob to come down. And that was Bob's first exposure to us.
This is how he started his review. The Leventhal's of Somers have shattered to pieces, and like some horrible crash on I-684, they make you slow down to take a look and think, wow, I'm glad that's not me. That would never be me. And as the images refuse to fade, I'll just pay more attention. Attention must be paid to the Leventhal's of Angel Beast, the bold new play by Howard Meyer at his Axial Theatre's home, the Social Hall of St. John's Episcopal Church in Pleasantville.
Bob wrote beautifully. And that was the other thing that was so, just so incredibly validating, right? Is that as a writer, you're sitting there with a play for several years, often all by yourself. And you read a Bob Heisler review, you feel like, oh my God, this guy got exactly what I was writing about. Because he just was into the work, and that's worth its weight in gold. I mean, you know, I was blessed as an artistic director that the man responded to the work of the theater. I was blessed because he responded to my work as a playwright. And I was blessed because ultimately he became a friend.
This guy, he comes to see your plays. He loves what he sees. How do you feel as an artistic director and a playwright when a critic is that into you and your company?
You're right and you're practicing a craft and you feel good about what you're doing, but there's ultimately always doubts. Mm-hmm. Do I have this? Do I have what it takes? Do I have the talent? So to have someone like him come along and say, you're good and keep going. And I think we all need that kind of person in our life. And Bob was definitely one of those people for me.
He loved the arts. He talked about the arts. He inhaled the arts. He just was truly someone who could not help but, talk about the arts in glowing terms.
What do you mean when you say Bob was your inside man in terms of arts coverage in Westchester?
Frequently I would go to something and Bob would be there, not necessarily because he was writing about it, but just to know the field. I mean, you just can't be in a job as an arts editor and not be exposed to the sector, the arts sector. So he took the time to talk to people in the arts. He took the time to know about the subject. And in that regard, he was special. You don't find many newspaper people who are so engaged.
A lot of people say Bob thought outside the box in terms of coverage. Give me an example.
He once approached me and said to me, Janet, let's do a festival of high school musicals. He thought that would be just a fun thing to do. So he was very interested in cultivating young talent, I would say. I think he did think outside the box on many, many different levels.
There are people who write reviews of plays, and there are people who are critics. A critic is somebody who can take the contemporary times and talk to the readers in terms of their times, put the play in their time. And Bob did that just impeccably and taught me to look that way. I was a reviewer until I met Bob Heisler. Then I became what I hope to be, a critic, because he brought that out of me.
And he had a real passion for life, for the arts, as we know, where Axial is concerned, certainly, and for other people. He was very much a people person.
He didn't want people to worry about him. He wanted to take care of other people, make sure they were taken care of, but I don't think he wanted people to worry about him.
And I guess my one sadness is I didn't get to say goodbye to the guy, That I would have loved to have thanked him for his friendship and for, his encouragement.
He had the best laugh in the newsroom. You could hear him a block away when he laughed at something. He loved his daughter to a distraction.
We're all in this together. And that was sort of his mantra too, very collaborative. We're all equal, I may be leading us and directing us, but I'm no better than you.
The loss was not just the loss of a guy that really helped put Axial on the map, but it was of a guy who was a true blue theater lover, who knew how to look at theater and knew how to talk about theater, and was a friend.